Ahoy to any viewers, this is Zephyr providing my first iGame Naked video tutorial. Today we'll be going over the workflow of generating simple collisions for a static mesh in Blender using an add-on by Weasel called Simple Colliders, which is available to download in the video description. The content covered in this video will be on Unreal Engine 4.27 for the game Into the Radius, though the information can be applied to Unreal Engine 5 games. A common misconception is that the collision surfaces can only be added using the Unreal Engine Static Mesh Editor or auto-generated convex holes. But most modern game engines like Unreal Engine and Unity include importing collision objects alongside a static mesh. Generating accurate, simple collisions can also be a simple process, no pun intended, and you don't need to sacrifice accuracy or optimization with most approaches. Moving on, we will be operating under the pretense of having prior experience with Blender and Unreal Engine interfaces and will not be discussing setup outside of exporting for Blender, importing FBX files into Unreal, and the Simple Colliders add-on. As per Unreal Engine's official documentation under section Working with Content, FBX Content Pipeline, and FBX Static Mesh Pipeline has a section on collision stating, simplified collision geometry is important for optimizing collision detection in-game. Unreal Engine provides basic tools for creating collision geometry within the static mesh editor. Some circumstances, though, are best handled by creating custom collision geometry within your 3D modeling application and exporting it with the render mesh. Generally, this is true for any mesh with an opening or concave area that objects need to not collide with. Collision meshes are identified by the importer based on their name. We'll be using the syntax UCX for convex objects. A convex object can be any completely closed convex 3D shape. For example, a box can also be a convex object. Caveats and considerations. The rendered mesh name must be identical to the name of the object the collision mesh is associated with in the 3D application. So, if you have a render mesh named tree_01 in your 3D application, your collision mesh should be in the scene with that mesh named UCX_tree_01, and then exported along with the render mesh to the same FBX file. If you need more than one collision object for a mesh, you can extend their names with further identifiers, and they will all be associated as collisions for that mesh. Once your collisions are set up, you can export both the render and collision mesh in the same FBX file. When you import the FBX file into Unreal Editor, it will find the collision mesh, remove it from the render mesh, and turn it into the collision model. Now, back in Blender, go ahead and enable Simple Colliders. In the Options menu of Simple Colliders, under the Presets category, make sure that uedefault.py is set as the default preset. From there, scroll down to the Prefix tab and enable Use Replace Name, and then replace Geo with the name of the static mesh you are using. Now that we're ready to get started, you might notice there's quite a few options for collider shapes. We'll only be using the add box, convex hole, and 10 to 26 depth of polygon holes. Select your object and enter edit mode. From here we can start to select the faces we want for our individual convex holes. I often use the L key for selecting linked geometry, but using the C key for the selection brush is also very useful. There's no need to separate the individual parts, and you can hide any part you've already generated colliders for using the H key while the faces are selected. Once we've got our selection for our first object finalized, feel free to click the relevant collider shape option to generate a shape based on the selection. This will immediately create a new collection in the outliner with a prefix and selected naming mechanism. Don't worry about manually renaming if you end up with the UBX prefixes or duplicated objects creating suffixes in your collection. The Simple Colliders add-on has an option to regenerate names or to reassign all colliders as convex holes, thus organizing them neatly for export. Continue generating your collider shapes until your entire object is completed. It's up to you to determine if the object necessitates having more or less complex collision shapes. Once you are ready for export, make sure to right-click on the collider's collection and hit Select Objects, then Control mouse click the primary object. When preparing to export the FBX file, I limit to selected objects, only export mesh object types, change the transform forward axis to -y forward, and then geometry smoothing to smoothing groups, alongside triangulate faces and tangent spaces. For our Unreal Engine import, we'll go ahead and make sure that both options under the mesh category are unchecked. Continuing forward, we will make sure that the option 1 convex hole per UCX is enabled. If checked, 1 convex hole per UCX prefixed collision mesh will be generated instead of decomposing into multiple convex holes. Make sure to import all, and then once your object is in your content browser, you can double-click to open the static mesh editor, look for the collision selection in the upper toolbar, and then select simple collisions to view your new collisions.